Hello and welcome everyone to my channel. My name is Kyle, and as I've promised in my last video, I will be doing some kind of review / opinion about Battlefield 6. Without further ado, I suggest we jump straight into the review, and I suggest that we start with actually the weakest part of the game, which in my opinion is the single player campaign. However, before I tell you why I think that the campaign is the absolute weakest part of this game, I would like to briefly summarize the entire storyline for you. So if you haven't completed the campaign yourself, but you're planning on doing so, I suggest you skip to this timecode on the screen to avoid any spoilers. So we're given root cause for the campaign and actually for the conflict that's happening in the multiplayer when we first launched Battlefield 6. Basically, NATO Secretary General was assassinated and NATO simply ignored it, which in itself caused some countries in the alliance to question what even is NATO, if NATO is just gonna ignore the assassination of the highest ranking officer of the alliance, and even caused some countries to leave. The campaign begins when several countries walked from NATO and started to look for better security guarantees. And Pax Armata, which is a private military corporation, which is also backed by former NATO member countries, exploits it. So the first mission begins when Pax apparently made a deal with Georgia, the country and not the state, my dear American viewers, and NATO forces are evacuating under deadline. However, what was meant to be a peaceful takeover by Pax forces over NATO bases turned into a full-blown attack by Pax forces. Right before the attack happens, we are given control over Murphy, who is a US Marine, and he together with his squad have already packed their stuff to leave because, as you remember, everyone expected it to be just a simple, peaceful takeover with no fighting. So when attack does happen, everyone is utterly confused, and first of all, of course, they're trying to survive, but second of all, they're trying to understand why is it happening. Pax would have had this territory without any of this fighting anyways, so why would they attack now? As we progress, we quickly learn that Pax is trying to seize some NATO servers, which contain very sensitive information and documents. We are left with no better options than...
So we destroy those servers before they compromise NATO.
Holy shit.
So we quickly kind of secure the building, set the C4 chargers and then go to the roof to get evacuated. After a short moment of holding the position, the helicopter finally arrives and we're getting evacuated. And life is supposed to be good. I mean, server is down, they're not getting information out of that for sure. Pax people in the building, well, fuck them, they attacked us first. We ourselves are in the helicopter, we are getting evacuated, everything is good. However, the helicopter is quickly shut down and after the crash, everyone is of course injured. However, we all decide that we are not giving up without a fight, and to be fair, during my first playthrough, I thought this was the Battlefield 1 kind of situation when you're not expected to survive. However, little did I know I was actually supposed to survive, so I failed the mission the first time I've played it, and then after replaying the checkpoint I finally got it, I've survived it, and then the allied helicopter came to rescue me. At this point I was the only survivor from the entire squad. And this mission is the peak this campaign can offer us. I swear, this mission is the best mission in the entire campaign, starting from the atmosphere, which is amazing throughout the entire game, ending in emotions you feel when you actually start losing squad mates one by one in that crashed helicopter. Let's not get too excited because this mission is literally peak. This is the best mission of the entire campaign and there's nothing better in this campaign going on. It only gets worse from here. Anyways, the story continues 1 year later when we break into Officer Mills' house under the pretense of protecting her from Pax squad. And this is the beginning of a essentially very large cutscene around which the entire campaign revolves itself. What annoys me the most though is not the fact that the story revolves around this one very large cutscene. This could be fine. However, even in this first fragment of this cutscene, it's so heavily implied that Mills is a traitor that, I don't know, I just knew that she was a traitor since the second mission, even before that, since that cutscene. And the rest of the story missions are simply memories which arise from the dialogue with Mills. Anyways, firstly we remember Gibraltar as Gecko, where we are deployed to provide sniper coverage so other team can disable Pax's raiders. After we successfully take out Pax's raiders and anti-air defenses, we switch to Murphy and Lopez, who are deploying on the coast of the Gibraltar. Everything immediately goes to shit though, with our ship being hit. But we still managed to deploy rather successfully, even though this whole encounter seems like a D-Day of sorts with many soldiers not making it out alive. Nevertheless, we more or less successfully deploy, escort our armored vehicles, secure alleyways in the process, then we reach the Overwatch position and scout out the enemies and... ooh, that's definitely a war crime. Anyways, we proceed to defeat everyone, however our main target is gone, that being Kincaid, the leader of PAX, who seemingly was fed insider info in order to escape.
Fucker's gone!
After that mission we are met by another fascinating dialogue with Mills, where again it is so heavily implied that she is a traitor that it's common knowledge at this point. Anyways, during one of the rants about trust, since apparently we don't trust Mills enough, we remember Cairo, where yeah, we go again because we remembered Cairo, so of course we go back to Cairo in our memories. Anyways, in Cairo we have, or rather had, since it's a memory, a special operation to rescue our informer, or at the very least collect the intel. We successfully break through in the entire army of PAX as just 4 people, and yeah, we got that intel. Might be another war crime though, however, I mean, PAX was committing war crimes on this guy long before we came around, so try proving anything, to be fair. Forget the war crimes, it's now time to evacuate, and as per usual, every single plan for us to evacuate goes to absolute shit. Yet we still managed to escape eventually, with one of our guys being hit in the process of protecting such a valuable, not gonna fear to say that, truly a piece of information. But he survived, so that's a good ending. Anyways, again we're met by another part of fascinating dialogue with Mills, where it is again heavily implied that she is a traitor and fed PAX Project Valis, which allows to black out satellite imagery.
PAX had Project Valis.
Then we remember Brooklyn after the speech about confidence, and now we're in Brooklyn, where Kincaid is planning to launch missiles. We do everything we can to stop him, including blowing up our own bridge to stop the train, however... yeah. Anyways, we proceed to fall from the bridge. After falling from the bridge, we, as a true Marine, survive such a minor inconvenience and realize that the next target is the President of the United States, Fernandez, so logically our next mission is to protect him. We reach him, realize that we are cut out majorly due to drone presence in the area, therefore just 2 Marines wipe out the entirety of PAX's drone squad and its infantry support. With some more fighting we finally manage to evacuate the president, and that's the first time when we encounter Kincaid face to face, but when it seems like everything is over...
Sneaky, sneaky.
Yeah, there's another PAX soldier who takes us under control and then gets killed. Truly a tragedy.
You have to rise up. You have to be the leader. Get on your knees. Don't. Fast. Hold on. We can't. I can't do this without you. Fast. Fast.
Next up we're in Egypt, which seemingly is more of a mission to showcase tank gameplay. After that cutscene we're shown how PAX's extraction/capture team is bravely neutralized by us. After that cutscene we're thrown to operation of destroying data links, so SAMs won't be functional. However, as per usual, everything goes to shit and we end up requesting a democracy spread on the dam, which also almost goes to shit due to anti-air vehicles being present on the dam. However, we managed to take out air defenses as just 4 Marines and escape the dam in the last second. Next up, Mills is obviously reaching for a weapon. What did she think though? She's surrounded by 4 Marines who single-handedly can take out all of the air defense vehicles and an army the size of a small nation, and she wanted to defeat us with a pistol? After that we find the documents to which she led us herself when she started running as soon as we started shooting the PAX's team. After a small dialogue we blame Mills for a crater in Tajikistan which used to be a mountain. Yes, that's a quote, and yes, it's fire, I'm gonna give this campaign that.
Are the enemy from within. Because of people like you, PAX got their hands on an XC. Because of you, there's a crater in Tajikistan that used to be a mountain!
Then we are finally on the last mission of this campaign, which by the end of it felt like ages to complete. We attempt to take out the missiles which would cause mass destruction all over the world. Our squad does perfectly, however as an army we failed the task successfully, with missiles still blowing up but without ever taking off. So after a very motivational speech by Murphy we decide that we are finishing this right now. So we conduct an assault on Kincaid's bunker/headquarters. We of course just breeze through an army the size of a small nation, and we reach Kincaid, who finally reveals, in quotation marks, that Mills is a traitor. Well, supposedly as much as you can believe a manipulative maniac, but our knowledge at this point is backed up by the fact that Mills orders another spread of democracy, but this time on our heads, which finally clues our squad into the fact that she is a traitor. And then there is a final cutscene where Mills still tries to deny everything, but ultimately there is presumably an execution order with which Murphy not happily but complies. Wow, that was a hot pile of mid-storytelling. You see, I don't even think that the story itself was bad, but the way it's told is simply horrible. I think the fact that Mills is a traitor should be revealed at the very end of the story and not shoved into our faces in the second mission. Instead of progressing the story mission by mission, we essentially start in the endgame and then learn the story through memories, which is, well, certainly a way to tell a story, but in this case all of the unexpected plot twists are shoved into our faces since literally a second mission. This is probably one of the most boring campaigns I've played in a while. I'm gonna give some credit though, when major battles are happening in the campaign you do actually feel like you're in the middle of a large conflict. Well, except the last missions are a bit too many scripted explosions. Also, by the middle of my campaign playthrough, it felt like a very lazily done mode which is there just simply to be there. The entire campaign beyond third or fourth mission feels like a cycle. You shoot enemies, boom, there is an explosion, cutscene. New mission, you shoot enemies, boom, guess what, there is an explosion, cutscene. It is monotone and isn't interesting, and the scripted destruction of military vehicles in the last mission, which was meant to create the atmosphere during the battle and bring some action, just feels so off and out of place, because there is nothing hitting that car or that helicopter for it to just spontaneously combust. I'm very disappointed by how the campaign turned out. Even though the plot is quite cliché, it could have been at least okay if they would have done it right. Because after the first mission I was so excited and thought that the entire campaign is gonna be this much fun, but unfortunately it's just not the case. Kind of small notices now. Firstly, I don't really have an issue with overly heroic actions when one squad takes an entire army out, but it's more of a fun little thing which I've noticed is quite persistent in almost all of the first-person shooter campaigns. Also a small remark. Your squad members actually reviving you rather than sending you straight back to the checkpoint is a massive W and creates even better atmosphere. I mean, I obviously dislike the campaign. However, what do you think? I mean, please write in the comment section what your opinion is. Maybe campaign is the me problem and not everyone's problem. And yes, I'm actually interested in your opinion. This is not simply bait for you to write a comment. I'm actually gonna read them. I honestly don't understand creators who ask to write a comment and never read them. Anyways, let's come back to the review. We all know that Battlefield's priority, at least in the recent years, has never been about the campaign. So let's finally talk about the bread and butter of the Battlefield series, multiplayer. I'm gonna be honest, multiplayer is something I was skeptical at first because I personally didn't get a chance to play Battlefield 6 Open Beta, as I've stated in my previous video. However, now it's here in its full version and it's great. Let's go through some basics for people who maybe are not that familiar with Battlefield franchise. So you have 4 classes. You can play as any of those classes and you can change among them even during the game every time you die. I mean, class names are self-explanatory. Assault specialized in assault, engineer specialized in armored vehicles, support is like a medic and ammo guy or whatever, and recon are snipers. That's quite it. And also recon as a class is designed to bring the maximum intel for your team if you play him right. Unlike previous Battlefields, in this Battlefield you can actually play any weapon on any class, so essentially you can be an assault with a sniper rifle. What the f is the point? Who knows, but you can be. However, developers still needed to encourage players to play with each weapon type. That's why signature weapons exist. For assaults, for example, it's AR, and with an AR in hand, assault gets faster draw times and faster sprinting to fire time, meaning you can start shooting faster after exiting sprint, which could be quite handy for capturing the objective, or rather rushing the objective. For engineers, signature weapon are SMGs, and their perk is enhanced hipfire accuracy while using them. It's neither here nor there, could be useful, who knows. For support, it's LMGs, who get faster draw times and no movement speed penalty for carrying a large killing machine around, literally. And finally, recons, they're proficient with sniper rifles, which gives them improved marksmanship skills, which includes reduced weapon sway, quicker rechambering between shots, and better breast control for steadier aim. However, that's not everything marksmanship skills do, and probably the most important part about them is accuracy, because sure, you can be an assault with a sniper rifle, you're probably a dumbass then, but sure, this is the beauty of the game, you can be a dumbass, but your accuracy is gonna be pure garbage. You would be aiming straight to the head of the enemy and the bullet would miss, because assaults don't have marksmanship skills, and this is kind of the way developers prevented assaults just picking sniper rifles and quick scoping everyone. I mean, also considering the fact that assaults are the only class in the game that can have 2 primary weapons, giving them the ability to be just as accurate as recons with a sniper rifle would be just too OP. Unlike many Battlefield fans, I'm actually the one who welcomes this change, and yes, even though now nothing prevents your stupid teammate from playing recon with an LMG, except, well, common sense. However, I simply love the fact that you're no longer locked by your class if you really love playing with ARs, for example. Now you can also be an engineer or support with an AR, or an assault with an SMG if it's a smaller map and you need to push objective and fight at a closer range. And from what I've seen in real games, the encouragement to play class's signature weapon is done very well, because mostly I see supports with LMGs, engineers with SMGs, and assaults with ARs, and recons of course with a sniper rifle. And the best thing about this whole thing is now you have a choice. You can easily play a class signature weapon with all its perks, but you can just as easily just pass on these perks, like you don't need them, and still play any class with any weapon depending on the situation on the battlefield. Also, the major decision to finally give respawn beacon to the assault class is something which honestly should have been done ages ago. In all of the previous battlefields, that respawn beacon would essentially be simply recon's way of quickly respawning back to their desired hill. Now this beacon can be of an actual use in pushing the objective. Now let's talk about what you're actually going to play, so the game modes. So there's a variety of game modes, both large scale and small scale. For large scale you have Battlefield's signature conquest, basically 5 to 6 objectives usually, and whichever team holds the majority of them for the longer period of time wins. Then there is escalation, which is conquest with some extra steps really, because you start with the same amount of objectives as you would in a conquest, but then depending on which team holds the majority of the objectives, this team scores a point. Like for example, if there are 4 objectives and one team holds 3 of them for a period of time, this team scores a point. After the point is scored, the amount of objectives is reduced and it goes all over again. And this entire game goes on until one of the teams reaches 3 points in total. Then there is Breakthrough, and Breakthrough, oh boy, I loved that game mode in Battlefield 1. It was called Frontlines, but doesn't really matter, it's the same thing. You basically have sectors, you have defenders, you have attackers. Defenders defend the sector, as in preventing the attackers team from capturing the objective, and attackers are trying to progress through the sectors by capturing all of the objectives in said sector. Then there are small scale modes for times where you want an experience resembling Call of Duty, for example Team Deathmatch, self-explanatory, Squad Deathmatch, same thing, but now it's squads against the teams and there are 4 of them. Then there is Domination, which is a scaled down conquest, so basically same thing as Conquest but on a small map without any armored vehicles. Then there is also King of the Hill, which is Call of Duty's hardpoint. I've played it once accidentally when I wanted to try out close quarter combat, and well, it is literally hardpoint from Call of Duty, and unlike Squad Deathmatch or Team Deathmatch or Domination, it just feels boring. Also there is another game mode which kind of neither here nor there, which is Rush. It's kind of in between, so it's kind of a medium scale combat. There are some armored vehicles, though mostly anti-infantry, and they're usually on the attack side. The best description I can give this game mode is a sized-down version of Breakthrough. It also has sectors, usually has 2 objectives in each sector. However, instead of capture them, like in the usual Conquest, Breakthrough or Domination, attackers have to plant the bomb and explode them. The gameplay in the majority of the game modes is fun and dynamic. That's, of course, if you want it to be dynamic. You're free to choose whether to spawn on base and calmly make your way to the desired objective, or you can spawn next to a contested objective and once again realize that tanks don't really concern themselves with meta builds, Call of Duty players. Yes, I'm looking directly at you. Jokes aside though, being in the middle of the fight is generally fun, no matter your role. I'm not going to lie if I say that I loved the gameplay for every single role. Wanna run at the objective and try to hold onto the position so your squad could spawn on you? Go ahead, my Daniel Little Assault player. Or do you want to be a medic who heroically runs through the battlefield and refuses to let anybody to die? Support is just for you. Or maybe you're a chill dude who doesn't want to be concerned about tanks, but rather wants tanks to be concerned about him. Engineer all the way. Even playing recon using your drone to mark enemies and then sniping them is extremely fun. However, sniping experience took a major hit due to one small but still present issue, which I'm gonna talk about a bit later in the video. To sum it up, every role is fun in its own way, and I love changing between them even during one match to better fit the situation on the battlefield. For example, when I would notice that enemy tanks are a bit too unconcerned, I'll switch to an engineer and make them concerned. Overall, Battlefield is really back, and Battlefield 6 brings back the vibes of the old Battlefield games. Remember that time when you didn't care about the KD and you would rather run as a medic and just revive everyone? Yes, this is back. You're not concerned about your KD, you're not concerned about being the next movement demon. This is a casual shooter for casual players, which is actually fun. If you've never tried it, I would advise you to do so. Speaking on the maps, almost all of the maps flow great, however that's only if you consider traditional Conquest. Some of the maps are absolute hell to play as an attacker in Breakthrough. For example, Mirak Valley. I'm gonna be honest, I've played this map in Breakthrough a bunch of times and not a single time have I seen attackers win the match. That being said, even taking the first sector on that map is a legit Mission Impossible. However, in this Mission Impossible, there is no Tom Cruise to light up the mood. And here we came to some issues with the game. They're not non-existent and some of them are quite serious. I'm gonna start with a rather minor issue, at least for me, it's map size. I cannot just leave out the fact that for many Battlefield veterans, some of the maps will feel really small and really tight. There's definitely an issue with big scale maps, or rather the issue is a lack of such. I'm not saying maps should be deserts like in 2042 on launch, but just slightly bigger. A slight extension on the borders would make many maps way more enjoyable and enable flanking. That being said, I don't feel the immediate need for such maps or such changes, since I already enjoy the majority of the maps anyways. However, for some hardcore Battlefield players, maps are too small, you can read it on Reddit, Steam reviews, wherever you like. Also, I wouldn't say that I felt mid-grinder type of vibe in Conquest, like many people are saying. However, I will admit that sometimes I wished for more flanking routes to be available on the maps. For example, in Conquest, when my team is getting dominated, and there is essentially no way for me, my squad or my team to flank, to maybe turn the entire game around, so we're just stuck in this limbo with just like one objective, just waiting for our tickets to run out. So DICE could definitely look into this. So the maps aren't really a huge problem for me, but I see the ways how they could be improved, and that's what I think. But what do you think? I'm actually curious about what you guys watching this video probably are thinking. Let's talk about Portal. Portal itself is not an issue. Portal is great and has a massive potential for unique experiences, though a great concept. In practice, right after launch, majority of the server tokens were mostly filled up with farming maps. But I don't think that simply disabling challenge progression in Portal where bots are enabled was the right move. That's definitely a fuck-up from DICE's side. What they should have done instead is first fix the challenges, and after, only if the XP farming still persists, maybe they could consider XP rework in Portal. So far I haven't been much of a Portal fan myself, however I already can see how that could be an issue. For example, I like the Extraction portal, which is Call of Duty Zombies but in Battlefield 6. And of course bots are enabled there, that's the entire point of this game mode, and people are not XP farming, they're having fun in your game in their own way. Why would you deprive those people of any type of XP just because the bots are enabled? Maybe you should really focus on your challenges first. Maybe there is a reason people instantly went to portal maps to grind your challenges rather than playing the game. As far as I understand, they've announced that this is a kind of temporary measure, but damn, this is a shitty temporary measure, not gonna lie. Next up, a rather small issue, but really severe for me, it's controller dead zones. You see, I'm a controller player. However, unlike the majority of the controller players, I actively refuse to play with aim assist. I simply dislike when it's program aiming for me and not me actually aiming. And essentially, playing with aim assist is like, it's not me being better, it's basically a chance if my aim assist kicked in before the other guy's aim assist kicked in. So I turn it off in every single shooter games that I play. What I didn't expect is that Battlefield is gonna have an issue with that. Since I am a long-time controller player on PC, I firstly accustomed myself to high sensitivity because I had to, just not to fall behind in aiming speed against mouse and keyboard players, especially in Siege. In Siege there's just no such thing as aim assist, by the way. Then I got so used to it that a high sensitivity is now my default preference in almost any game. However, that also means that I play with either a zero dead zone or a very low value of dead zone, and as of now, there is no such thing as a zero dead zone in Battlefield 6. Don't get me wrong, you can set it to zero, however, it isn't even remotely close to zero, which makes micro adjustments almost impossible to make. It seems to become better, or maybe I'm just gaslighting myself, but it's still an issue and it's very annoying at times when I need to move my crosshair a millimeter and not a meter to the side. For mouse and keyboard players, the best description of my feeling can give you is imagine that when moving your mouse, the first centimeter isn't registered at all. And when the input is finally registered, it's the same as if you would have moved your mouse more than 1 centimeter. Now, here's a reference of what a zero dead zone would look like and should look like. See the slight movement of the crosshair because the stick isn't perfectly centered, because stick drift and whatever. Well, and here is the zero dead zone in Battlefield 6. There's even a Windows input monitor to demonstrate that my controller is in fact actively registering movement, however my crosshair is not moving and the dead zone is set to 0, so it's supposed to move. This one small issue single-handedly pretty much stops me from playing Recon most of the time, and then even when playing Assault, Support or Engineer, still feel it. Still when I encounter an enemy and I'm trying to perfectly track him, I can't because my aim moves too much, because I'm trying to move my aim, it doesn't move, so I apply a bit more of an input and it moves too much. Anyways, enough of me venting about my peasant controller issues. Majority of the people play with mouse and keyboard and they love it and they don't have this issue, and yes, I'm jealous. Yes, I am jealous. But anyways, let's talk about progression. And progression talks are not baseless. While some of the challenges to unlock new content are doable by just simply playing the game, like for support with the challenge to simply earn points and supply your team, or an assault whose challenge to unlock a respawn beacon is earning points and getting kills using adrenaline syringe, you can complete both of those challenges accidentally by simply playing the game. I've played almost 28 hours at the time of writing this, and I almost unlocked respawn beacon, for example, without ever thinking about grinding for it. However, now there's really little amount of kills left with adrenaline syringe and I really want to unlock it, so I'll just use adrenaline syringe quite more often. However, some other challenges are simply hell. For example, the most popular example most likely, for Recon, to unlock a sniper, you need to make kills while being over 200 meters away from your target. Seems simple, right? One small issue with that is the distance from spawn to spawn on many maps. I mean, maybe not directly spawn to spawn, but it's close to that. And, you know, there's also such a thing called, I don't know, terrain on those maps, which would prevent you from sniping spawn to spawn directly to farm this. And examples of these impossible challenges are various. It's currently an issue, however Battlefield developers announced that they will be actively reviewing those challenges. Is it going to be true? Only time will tell. However, so far Battlefield 6 seemingly delivered on everything it's promised, well, except full XP in Portal I guess, and I at least hope that they deliver on this one too. However, something inside me tells me that EA is gonna step in and say no, we're gonna sell this shit. Oh, this player likes the sniper rifle, but he cannot make 500 kills in a single match over 200 meters? Well, he can unlock the sniper for only $9.99. A great marketing strategy, you know? That's it from me and the issues with this game. I definitely skipped some, like drone glitch and whatever. However, I found the issues that I've named the most severe, and I didn't want this video to be an hour long. It's already quite long as it is. However, if I've missed some game-breaking bug, yes, again, you can write it in the comments. I mean, firstly, sure, you watched this far, you're probably liking this video. Why not support this channel? You know, just one simple comment. And also, I am actually interested in what you guys think. I know it's hard to believe coming from even such a small YouTuber as me. YouTuber, loud word for subscribers, yeah. Anyways, I'm gonna jump straight to the conclusion to kind of summarize everything I've said in this video. Battlefield 6 is great. It's the first time since Battlefield 4 when I launched the new Battlefield, played multiplayer and felt the old Battlefield vibe. Don't get me wrong, Battlefield 1 was great, I have sunken tons of hours into the game. However, it wasn't a traditional Battlefield in my opinion, it was more of a historical spin-off, and it gave great vibes, but different ones. Anyways, Battlefield 6's gameplay, the time when your teammate carries you away under bullets to revive you, or you're the one carrying your teammate away, the small details such as blood appearing on your weapon over time, or the bullet casings being on the ground after an LMG spray. There's so many little details in Battlefield 6 that I don't think any video can cover all of them fully, and all of them together create the most atmospheric shooter experience I've seen in a while. This is truly the game where developers listen to the players and where we, simple players, aren't the problem anymore. A very rare, I would say legendary EAW. Yes, even with the questionable portal decision, yes, even with the questionable progression. Even with all of those issues, Battlefield 6 is extremely fun to play, and that's what matters in my opinion. This is finally a shooter game, which I desired for so long and I haven't even realized that. It's a casual shooter where there are no movement demons or SWATs who dominate every lobby. This is finally a shooter which I can launch and simply relax and have fun. Of course, I'm still gonna play my role, like a medic running around the map and refusing letting anyone to die. However, I don't need to sweat to be useful or to do well. This is finally a shooter game which is not esports friendly and is designed to be this simulator of Hollywood movie scenes in which you're actively taking part in almost every single match. You can encounter a Hollywood-worthy scene with the same level of action. I've seen multiple posts and Reddit threads about fatigue kicking in. That the game is so action-packed, and while I totally agree that the maps are smaller than they usually are in Battlefield series, firstly, no one is forcing you to spawn the contested objective. Spawn at your base and calmly strategically approach your desired objective. Secondly, you may have just gotten older, not even in the sense of age, but all of the responsibilities and tasks you complete throughout the day have a toll on your energy level in the evenings when you're trying to enjoy gaming. I also, myself, skipped a couple of evenings of Battlefield gameplay because I wanted to play something more chill and relaxing because I was tired, and a shooter game inherently requires a higher level of concentration even if you're not sweating. And that is not a Battlefield 6 issue, since in that state I wouldn't have played any shooter game, be it Battlefield 1, 4, Call of Duty or any other shooter game you can name. And no, I still think flanking can be improved, however, at least for now I'm having as much fun as I can, and I still see space for at least some kind of strategical gameplay, even with flanking not nearly as present as in earlier Battlefield games. And also to answer the most stereotypical lingering question, would I recommend buying this game right now? Me personally, I certainly would. If you have the funds, have the ability, sure, go ahead. However, everyone should keep in mind that even though this game does have the Battlefield 3/4 vibe, It is not that. It is a Battlefield, and a good one at that, great one at that. This Battlefield really does bring the entire series back into competition. However, even though we potentially will have larger scale maps, and it seems like developers are actively working on the game, and it probably will become better over time with more maps, improvements and such, it is still not exactly an old era Battlefield. It is quite different compared to Battlefield 4, and it may come to simply preference. Before fully switching to Call of Duty after 2042 disastrous launch, I was a hardcore Battlefield fan and I loved the game, even with all of its current problems, and yes, with current maps as well. So is the series finally back? Oh, it goddamn is. It goddamn is back. However, if you specifically desire 3-kilometer maps, kind of exaggerating here, but you probably get my point, the game is not exactly in that state as of now. Will it be in that state in the future? I think so. However, it's EA we're talking about, so I wouldn't bet on anything. So, anyways, I'll go back to enjoying Battlefield 6. Maybe we'll randomly meet there. Cheers.